This conference will now
I
be
was
recorded.
just going to say that too. Why is everyone so quiet Monday morning?
It's a Monday morning, that's why. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Dave, and Holly, and Lindsay, and caller number 2, and our committee. I'll call the meeting to order at 9 a.m. Could I get a confirmation of the agenda, please? A mover and a seconder, John and Joan. Are there any discussions, additions? Nope, seeing none. No comments from the committee. Are there any opposed? Okay, that is carried by unanimous consent. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Hearing none, a couple of shakes. I'll just remind everyone that they can declare it at any time throughout the meeting if one should present itself. We have no delegations today. Adoption of the minutes. Be it resolved that the committee approve the minutes from the June 13th, 2022 Southgate Community Fund Management meeting as presented. I have Brian and a seconder. John, thank you. Are there any questions about the minutes? Okay then. Any opposed to approving the minutes as presented? That is carried by unanimous consent. Welcome, Christine. Nice to see you. Staff update, terms of reference review and approval. Is that you, Dave?
Yes. In the agenda, there is some minor changes to membership, and there's a section on, I believe, number 6 in under the meeting information related to quarterly and 4 times a year as minimum number of meetings that we attend. So we've changed in the membership 2 to 3, and then 4 to 6 for Southgate Community. So that would then allow the committee to be somewhere between 6 and 9 members at any point in time, to give that flexibility without coming back to change the terms of reference in the future. And it also gives direction on more definition on the actual ambassadors that would represent this committee to the Community Foundation, Ray Bruce. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. I thought it clarified those sections quite well. I don't see a resolution on the agenda for that, Holly, and I would imagine this is a recommendation back to council to approve the terms of reference as amended.
Yes. Yes.
A recommendation from the committee. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay. I'm just wondering if we have a resolution that we could pop up on the screen for someone to move and second.
Yep, just 1 second.
Thanks, Holly. Oh, welcome, Stuart. We're just approving the, or Brian, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question regarding the mandate, and I'm glad Stuart's here because he may be able to shed some more light on this from his perspective. But is the main focus of this group to actually fundraise for the committee, or is the main focus for this committee to make the community aware of opportunities to contribute funds to this community fund? And maybe I'm splitting hairs, or maybe I'm way off on that question, but I'd like a little clarification on that particular question, if I could, Madam Chair, please.
That's a great question. Stuart, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. That is a good question. And I think it's a kind of a dance between the two. By raising public awareness about what the Community Foundation does and what the Community Fund does, we build relationships and open opportunities for people to make meaningful contributions to the fund so it grows. Some of the other community funds, Kincardine in particular, does some kind of, I'd call it soft fundraising, friend raising, where they are out in the community and it's through events and bringing people together that they do raise awareness, and they raise a little bit of money as well, but that's not the main goal. The Community Foundation itself is not an aggressive fundraiser at all, because we see sometimes those efforts being in competition with the charities and not-for-profits that we exist to support. So while I think it's difficult to say we don't fundraise, because we are active, building relationships and putting philanthropy out there as a great thing for people to consider. We're not really aggressive about it. It's not our main goal. I'm not sure that this is a very clear answer to your wise question, but I think I'm explaining the relationship of fundraising with friend raising and public awareness building, which is what the committee can do. And meeting people and talking about what we can do, and if there's a event charge or there's a fun thing to participate in that raises a few dollars, that's wonderful. And Kincardine's been doing that so elegantly the last couple of years with their cardboard boat race, for example, where the registration fee is only about $10 or $12. They make a couple of $100, but they get 200 or 300 people out to the beach in the morning, all excited about what they're seeing and coming together and building community and talking about the fund and celebrating their grant recipients. So I don't think it's aggressive fundraising, but raising funds is always a great thing to do. And if you can do that as you make friends and spread the word, then I think it's appropriate as well for the committee to consider activities like that. I hope that's
that helps a lot, Stuart. Thank you very much, because I sometimes get I get some confusion, and as I'm sure many of us do in the community, what this foundation actually does. Is it a fundraiser, or is it is it a service club? And no, it's not. So I'm happy for your answer, Stuart. That does help me. Thank you.
And thank you both for asking the question. And I love the fun or the more as opposed to fund, more like fun and friend raising. I actually like that, and it's to build more awareness that this fund actually exists. Welcome, Dawn. Glad you could join us. We are just on approving the terms of reference, Dawn, to let you know. And Brian, I think you heard the question. You came in at the right time. So we have a resolution on the screen. Be it resolved that the committee recommend that council consider the approval of the amendments to the Community Fund Management Terms of Reference. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Heather and Brian. Thank you. Is there any other questions, discussion about the terms of reference? Seeing none, are there any opposed? And that is carried by unanimous consent. Southgate Community Fund Strategies. Dave? Yeah,
so this is kind of leading from Brian's question and the response by Stuart. From the last meeting, we came up with basically these 4 strategies that are within the minutes in relation to, what our participation levels would be, or do we want to be in those spaces. But education was a major discussion, foundation donations, granting opportunities, and then community events. And maybe I'll ask a follow-up of Stuart. And maybe I'm going to answer the question, like Brian's question as a follow-up. I'm sure different communities do different levels of participation or involvement in these different projects or events or whatever we want to call them, and so on. Is that fair to say?
Yes. That there are varying levels of activity and engagement right across the community fund landscape. Some are very, very active and out there and really cultivating a high profile, and then other ones are a little bit more passive and kind of working behind the scenes. So yes, it varies just depending on capacity and focus and timing, all of those things.
Okay, good. So I think this is maybe where we go through these 4 strategies and discuss, our level of involvement, activity, and partnering maybe with other community organizations. And that will lead into the next discussion about fundraising events and so on. But I think we could just start with an open discussion on education and where we see that going. And who's involved in that process. And maybe Stuart, if there's any input there on how we work with, I think there's been some discussion in the past, how we work with Community Foundation Great Bruce at doing these type of things. But I'm sure we need some leadership on our own in that area as well.
Sure. So, kind of focusing on one of the relationships would be a great thing to do, and certainly we can support and help you manage through an event or some sort of activity around that, whether it's online, social media, or correspondence, whatever that is. I'm thinking a good example right now is the Owen Sound Community Fund and the Meaford Community Fund are collaborating on a estate planning workshop for the fall. And so they're engaging, they've targeted financial planners and families in their area. They want to structure intergenerational conversations about legacy giving and gift planning, and engage lawyers and financial advisors and financial professionals from the area towards, talking about what the community fund does, but also helping people out with urging them along in their efforts to plan for their estate. And the Community Foundation, we sit in on those meetings and we support it through coordinating the social media outreach. We are also lending expertise and kind of making links with other community funds to let them know about the process of pulling together an event like that. And Christine and I, coordinate the communications around that, and we hold the lists of people that will be invited, et cetera, et cetera. We might set up the Eventbrite and make sure there's registration. And the community fund takes care of the budgeting, that sort of thing. But our office is here to support those funds in their activity. So it's really the community fund committees that have initiated this activity, but we're right there along the way to assist and support and to coordinate all that activity with other things that are happening at the foundation.
Any questions there?
Dawn has a question. Go ahead, Dawn.
Yeah, this showing I've been late here understanding all this process, but Dave, we get all that Southgate solar investment fund and the other money. Southgate's got like $150,000 a year to invest in a community investment fund. So I don't understand additional community investment fund. And is this in addition to that community investment fund we already have in place?
Well, those community investment funds from the Eco Park and the solar, they're kind of mandated or focused at the activities, projects, events. But there's no reason, I'm glad you brought that up. There's no reason we couldn't look at allocating so much money every year from that to support this type of, donation, which we're going to talk about next. But and then that would flow into, we could grant, this committee could then have the latitudes to grant from that fund. or from those donations from those funds to this fund, if that's clear.
But if you've already have a, and supplementary, Madam Chair, if you're already having trouble getting applications to spend the money from the existing ones we have, I'm having a hard time understanding
Yeah.
the demand.
So yeah, those funds from Eco Park and solar are more under the control of council to do bigger things in the community, whether that's like a splash pad or whatever. But this is more along the lines of supporting community activity as far as the Optimists, the Lions, or the Fall Fair, or different organizations like that want to do smaller projects and create some community events, community awareness, whatever. But our focus here is to kind of take over, as you know, the grant program that we have, and that policy's in this agenda, but the grant policy for donations, funding, and grants to community organizations.
Well, I know that the Southgate one's the only one I can really speak to. There was an agreement that was had between the township and the solar people, but that funds was to be dispersed within the township. And I'm not sure,
Right.
Are you accumulating that, or how much has actually been dispersed?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but we get fairly, close to it. We like to keep, enough seed money in there, but we get fairly close, I think, to putting it out every year.
If I may, Brian has his hand up. He may be looking to answer what I was thinking of. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just going to say from Don's question, and it's a good question, but I pushed to have this community foundation initiative initiated primarily because the solar fund and the other fund in the east end of the township are finite amounts. And when those agreements are done, the money's gone. So my idea was to invest, and I think we have a motion on the books currently that $30,000 a year goes into the community foundation from the other two initiatives, so that it would perpetuate itself indefinitely and generate funds for the various grant programs that Dave was talking about. So there is $30,000 a year coming out of the solar fund, for instance, going into the community foundation fund, so that it is invested and will generate funds in perpetuity. And that was the whole idea of this initiative. But there are, those funds are still there, Don, absolutely, and they carry on, but they will I think it was a 20-year agreement with the solar, for instance, and at the end of 20 years, the money's gone. And yeah, we'll have projects to show for it, but the money's done. Whereas if we invest it into this fund, it'll generate money in perpetuity. That was the idea.
And is that 30 from both the east and the west, or 30 each individual?
It's 15 from each.
Yeah. I believe it was pulled from each.
So that's like 40% of that money is coming in.
No, it was 30 in total. I think it's 15 from each.
Right.
So
Okay.
annually, the solar fund is $75,000 a year, and the Eco Park fund contributes based on volume. And as Brian mentioned, council agreed that we can spend all the money, but in 20 years we have, there's nothing to carry on for the various community organizations. Other than the policy number 3 and what council of the day decides to put into that. Does that help clarify, Don?
Yeah, it does. And I understand and I appreciate the support, but I always caution any organization, once they start to get a little bit of money that they know they can count on, they work a little bit less. And I sometimes think organizations are better off if they have no money when they get started and they start working at it. A lot of organizations have fallen by the wayside when they get a war chest built up.
And I think the idea here is that, fine, we'll get a war chest built up, but that war chest will feed itself, and we'll be able to expand it in time to do bigger and better things and replace that solar fund, you know, in 20 years, that we have something to sustain itself.
Well, 15 grand a year isn't a huge amount, and it makes sense.
No.
Thank you.
If there's anything else in education, we could talk about that now or go on to foundation donations.
Brian?
Well, I was going to suggest that oh geez, just hold on. Sorry about that. I was going to say that I think there is some need of education or direction in the community, because there's going to be there is a huge turnover of, you know, the baby boomers are retiring, and I think there's a need for some estate planning education, not just in Southgate, of course, but that's our focus. I like the idea Stuart described in Meaford, what they're doing. I think something along that line of an education piece would be a good start for this group.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dave?
So I've got a question for Stuart. Like, at inception, like we are, should we, or has other organizations under your leadership, like Kincardine, just held a community discussion meeting and invited people to come, like business owners and, you know, so on, and organizations just say, hey, here we are, here's what we're about. Has there been that kind of thing? I think that would be a good place to start, but I'm not sure.
I think that sounds like a great idea, Dave, like kind of a town hall to introduce the concept of the community fund and to tell people what it's doing and what it hopes to do, and
Yes.
to kind of bring some clarity around some of the issues, you know, our good members are bringing up today. You know, a little bit of confusion about what it does and why. And yeah, and I should say to Don, I kind of missed that endowment part at the beginning when asked about that, but that really does set us apart from other types of funds in the area. The fact that all the monies are endowed, we never touch the capital, and we're really in it for the long haul. And what we're investing in is a fund that is going to support community well-being and resilience for generations to come. So that's a very compelling message, and you know, that's an important message when we're talking to folks about you know, their estate planning and rural wealth transfer and retaining wealth in the area where it was developed. So yeah, it all ties together. But I think an open forum like that would be a great thing to do to kind of kick it off. And Community Foundation Office could support that too. It might be a great chance to also introduce some of our findings from our Vital Focus on Housing report at the same time. You know, introduce something like that and then talk about the community fund kickoff. If we were looking for a message to build around to bring people in, the housing topic is a great one.
Thank you. Dave?
Just, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, what I was thinking of there is maybe we should plan something like that for like in the September, October. Summer's not a good time just to get people out. And maybe we could attend the seniors fair and the fall fair just with a table to promote what we're doing.
So I had a couple of questions about this. I think the organization information session, you know, by invitation, we send it out to all the community organizations specifically, as well as a general invitation to businesses, anyone that we do know, contact information so that it actually gets to them. I was wondering about the seniors fair and the fall fair, and maybe this is where we get into the communications plan, talking about brochures, and having something available that we can direct them to, whether that is online or a physical copy. I don't know if staff have reached out to Christine yet, but I know that you have some samples that we could piggyback on just by, this is the message. We want a consistent message across the Community Foundation Grey Bruce. Maybe it's just a matter of plugging in Southgate. And then I just had one other question, Dave. Because you included policy number 3 with this discussion, the intent by council is to eventually not have that donation grant and fund available, and funnel all community organizations to the Southgate Community Fund. Was that, that is my understanding, but I see.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just to comment on that, I would say we would evolve that policy, and maybe the policy would direct certain things or certain types of grant funding intakes to the community fund. But that would be a decision of council of the day when we get to that point. But at this point, I think for 2020, obviously 2022 and 2023, until we get this thing really up and running, until there's substantial funding there to support such things, we would need to maintain this grant policy or granting funding donation policy as it is, but I think it would evolve it over time.
Correct. And just to help, because I think that feeds into Dawn's question is, when does this pay out? How does this, build? It doesn't pay out until well, first of all, it has to be in place for a year, and it has to reach a certain threshold before it starts to pay out the interest bearing on that endowment fund. Correct, Stuart?
That's right, but we started with a substantial input, so next year we will be looking at beginning to pay out.
Oh, wonderful.
So maybe just to tie a bow around this whole education piece, we'll look at organizing a town hall meeting, maybe in the east and the west this fall, and we'll bring that back to council or the committee for discussion. And then I think the other thing is take a look at planning some community events, whether it's estate planning, definitely the seniors fair and fall fair representation. And I think the third thing is get some promotional materials, brochure, and get a website and presence there to start that communication piece to support, these meeting events that we're going to have in the community.
Thank you, Dave. Do staff need any, do we want a subcommittee? Does staff just want to bring something back to the next meeting, work with Christine and bring some options back for us to recommend or approve? What are your thoughts, Dave? How do you want to move forward on the education communication piece?
I'm going to leave that to the committee. If they think that is something they want to be involved in, for sure, we would take on the help and the support. Or we can just start doing some groundwork and bring it back to the whole committee. Like, when's our next meeting planned for?
Yep.
It would be August 8th if we're holding one in August. If we're planning to approve anything, I would imagine we would need a meeting at some point to.
Okay. With summer vacations,
it's up to the committee.
Yeah. With summer vacations, it's likely going to take some work. Likely by the 1st September to have something put together.
Well, I'm just to let you know that the next meeting would be the second Monday of September, which is the 12th, and that's after the fall fair. That doesn't mean that we can't physically be at the fall fair to talk about it, but if we don't have something like a script, people might be looking for more handouts, or perhaps there's some material that Community Foundation Grey Bruce already has in the can that we could use for the fall fair while
Yeah.
we're developing. Your thoughts, Dave?
So maybe that's a good point. So maybe what we'll do is, work on the promotion stuff and the brochures, social media for the seniors fair and the fall fair, and then kind of work in the background for more of the September discussion on the town hall meeting and the estate planning type activities.
So are you thinking we should have a meeting in August 8th? Or later I don't want to put, like, staff's got vacation, staff have a lot of things on the plate this year with the election, and I don't want to overburden them. And I know that from the affordable and attainable housing, you had various people assigned to look into those things with staff, obviously. Lindsay's got her hand up. Go ahead,
If I
Lindsay.
might, thank you, Councillor Dobry, or Chair Dobry, pardon me. I'm wondering if we can, you mentioned a subcommittee just to kind of help with staff to bring those things kind of together, and we can help in an assisting type of role, but if we could have some input and some help from some members, I think that would be, staff would really appreciate that.
Thank you, Lindsay, for that input. I know that it's a busy summer for the clerk's department for sure, and everyone else. So let's hear from the committee. Is there anyone who would be willing to work together, maybe 2 members to work with Christine to pull a draft together for our next meeting, and send it on to Lindsay and Holly, or looking for some input?
I'm not sure what Christine's commitment is to us totally, but I would say that Holly and Lindsay and I we'd take the leadership on it with their support and the input. Like, we could have somebody to bounce some stuff off with the committee, but
Stuart.
And maybe Christine and Stuart want to comment on that as well.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it shouldn't feel too daunting. A lot of the work, we can look at the templates that have been set up by the other CFs, and we have materials that we can use as resources to start with. Kincardine has just produced a nice little legacy giving brochure. We can look at that and just replicate and tailor the copy. The Community Foundation has banners and materials in terms of setting up a booth and giving things away, so we could wait on some of those materials. I wanted to mention that one of the most effective tools that I've seen utilized over the last couple of years was a short video that the Owen Sound Fund did just about their history. It was only like, I think, 3 or 4 minutes long. But whenever we share moving pictures on social media, we get huge response, and they've been able to use that on their website, on social media, at events and things. It's something that can run in the background. People can stand and watch. That just talks a little bit about what they do. So I'd add a video component into the mix with a brochure and some press release and information about town hall. That it all seems like a great little package to be taking out to the community.
Christine.
And I just wanted to share as well that I've tentatively created a page on our website with the community funds that shares a little bit about the Southgate Community Fund. So as you mentioned, if input wants to be shared, that's somewhere that we could definitely begin to incorporate that in. And as Stuart mentioned, adding a video would also be a great way to get more content on the page and just get more information out there about what the community fund would do. And then we could also have a social media post that would direct people to that page as well.
So I'll interject here. You could provide, Christine and Stuart, what you mentioned is that you could provide a draft, a recommendation that plugs in Southgate. I like the idea of a video, but we have no history at this present time for the fund. So are you referring to a history of other events that have occurred throughout Southgate, a history of Southgate, or are those videos specific to events to build awareness that have already happened through the community fund?
I would think that history, it's a short history, but it's a very compelling history. I think, you know, what council did last year in terms of setting a goal for the kind of, you know, fund for well-being and resilience and the future of the community. I think we get, you know, a couple of quick interviews with people that were around at the founding could be really inspirational, and people love it when they recognize a face and hear somebody talking. I think it could be a really compelling little short history. It doesn't have to last too long. You know, it is our present history at the moment. Next year we'll have granting to celebrate and maybe, you know, a different kind of story to tell. But you know, at this stage in the community funds development, I think it's really great to have community storytelling come to the fore and get the folks that have made the decision to talk about, you know, their goals for this fund, and maybe some of the committee members, citizens that have stepped forward that are investing their time in this would be great to hear about too. Doesn't have to be complex. Like I said, the storytelling aspect of it, just getting people to talk is a wonderful way to put something together really quickly, and can be done on an iPhone really. So it's not too cost intensive either. Anybody on TikTok yet?
Look at me. All right, so I like Dave's comment. Let's tie a bow around this. Is there anyone who from the committee that would like to participate in working with Christine and Stuart to develop a template to bring back to our next meeting? And certainly that's not, you know, exclusive of staff, but to do the preliminary review or concept, just to I'm just trying to help alleviate some staff time in going through that, you know, out of respect for their request. I'm happy to do it. I'm just offering it up to other people to get involved. Brian, you just came on the screen. I'm just wondering if everybody's busy, I know.
Yeah, busy. Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, hearing no volunteers, I will reach out to you, Christine, and maybe we could, because I understand how we got here, and maybe we can develop a template based on what you have in the can. As far as the video, what are the committee's thoughts on that? I'm wondering if perhaps Brian and John, being our mayor and deputy mayor on council, would be appropriate people for that messaging. And if there was a script and
I'm willing to help out in that respect, sure.
You know, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. I'm not sure what you're looking for, Stuart, but I'll let you direct that. Dave, you have your hand up.
Yeah, maybe I think if we could, get a couple committee members that we could bounce stuff off in preparation for the meeting and for our next meeting, that would be good in working with Stuart, Christine, and so on. Holly's pretty good at some of this stuff as well, and we'll use her for sure. But when it comes to the video, I think maybe what we better do is, Stuart, do you have any access to anybody that does these videos, puts them together?
Yes, we do. I can put together a list, and we also have the talents of a summer student that's a marketing intern in our office this year. So it might be something he could put a shoulder behind.
Okay. Let's see. Maybe staff can put together some scripts for the mayor and the deputy mayor. so on to, you know, if we could get a video snippet and then have somebody with expertise like that, that'd be great. At least would be something, even if it was 90, you know, or 180 seconds worth of something, we could, you know, use as our kind of our intro.
And through,
I apologize. I need to go in about 5 minutes or so. Some of the other discussion ahead of us, foundation donations, granting, and so on, they're part of this discussion as well. Maybe I'll let Lindsay, you know, take the feedback and we can discuss it after. These are more, you know, things we got to deal with in the future and maybe future meeting discussions. But if there's some feedback that we could get on those items, that'd be great as well.
On.
Barbara, I have to apologize because, as you know, we're getting ready for the rodeo here. I have a truck out here. I'm gonna have to, I'm sorry, I had to leave.
No problem, Don. Thank you for your questions. It was very helpful, actually, for us all to hear it.
I'll talk to Brian tonight if there's anything additional that I need to do or whatnot.
Or if we
Okay.
volunteer you for anything.
Yeah, well,
Kidding.
you can try.
I'm
My schedule doesn't seem to be getting any less.
yeah. Well, we'll see
Okay.
you at the rodeo at some point. Take
All
care.
right, 10-4. Bye.
Go ahead, Dave. Carry on. You're muted.
Here we go. Yeah, I'm just looking for feedback on all those items, and let's go back to, is there a couple members of the committee that wants to, you know, kind of peer review what we come up with?
Heather has her hand up. You're just volunteering, Heather, to.
Sure. Yeah, I can.
Awesome.
I can help out.
I think between Heather and I, does that give you enough coverage, Lindsay?
Yeah, I have a new staff member starting here shortly, so I'm gonna maybe make that their first project. And Polly's covering off 2 positions right now, so she doesn't have a whole lot of capacity for much else right now.
Right.
But I'm hoping this new person can help with yourself and Heather and Christine. Will be great.
If that helps alleviate some of the administrative pressures, I'm happy to do it. Heather and I can be circulated with some material, Christine, and whomever our new employee is. We'll look forward to meeting and working with her or him. So Dave, I know you have to leave shortly. Heather and I will work with staff and Christine to develop a draft for our next meeting of a brochure and/or script that will at least get us started for our events in September. And is there anything else you wanted to cover before you leave?
Just, you know, any kind of discussion, you know, I think some of what we've already talked about is going to lead into, you know, foundation donations, how we're going to recruit that kind of effort. But I think that's maybe a deeper discussion for another meeting. You know, the granting opportunities, again, that's going to be kind of an easy part when we get to that. But I think the community events and what we want to participate should be an initial discussion. In the short term, obviously the seniors fair and the fall fair, but what's the long term? What's our calendar going to look like for a 12-month period? You know, the Fireman's Frolic and Maple Fest and all those kind of events. So I think just a good, robust discussion on that issue would be good. And you know, 8.15 community fund management promotion strategies. I think we've talked a lot about that as well in the first you know, part of our marketing discussion. So anyway, that's, I think, where staff are looking at for some feedback and to work with Stuart and Christine to really make this thing fly.
Okay, thank you. And Joan has advised that she has to leave at 10:02. So we have 5 minutes with her. But I don't, well, we still have quorum, correct? After Joan and Dawn have left? Okay. Thank you. And all right, so where we are at this present time is we are into the community fundraising events. And I'm wondering if a list of those events that we've identified, like the Fireman's Frolic, the Seniors Fair, the Fall Fair, the rodeo, all of those, we have an idea of when they happen, if that would be something that would benefit the committee coming back to our next meeting with, you know, a calendar of those events and dates where we could reach out to the various other groups that are listed in the Southgate Community Fund strategy, where we talk about Generation Connection, Hillside Academy, Young at Heart. We know that they meet monthly. It may be just a committee member or two going to one of their meetings and sharing that information, or making sure that they're invited to the town hall that we may plan for the fall. Thoughts from the committee and from, of course, Christine and Stuart? Brian.
Yeah, well, I'll let Joan go ahead because she has to leave shortly.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see her. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you. I will be at the Seniors Fair. So if there is any calendar, any paperwork, any brochures or anything that we come up with, if we're having a table there, I will be able to man the table for a couple hours. So if there is anything for that, I would be available for the fair.
Wonderful. So you're going to be there from Junction Community Initiatives?
No, I'm just volunteering.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I'm going to be there all day too, so maybe we can spell off. But I know that I'm probably doing a lot of running around. Brian.
Well, I was just going to say that, yeah, I think if we can coordinate to attend events being put on in the community to educate the community what is the Community Foundation and what is, as Stuart said, what is our mandate and what is our goal or our goals, plural. I think that would be a big start to get the community's head around what we're doing and what we're trying to do. Because I know for a long time, and still I get, community members saying, well, what are they raising money for? Well, what's their project? Well, that's not what this is. It's a different animal. And it's hard to, you got to keep pounding away on that message, and it takes time. And the more we're visible, the more people will ask questions and the more people will understand what exactly we're doing or trying to do. So I think if we concentrate our first efforts on getting the word out and being visible in the community, that's where we need to start.
I agree, Brian.
I'm available to, man a table at any various events, time permitting, for sure.
So I think putting a schedule together of a calendar, let's have and plug in, like we used to have that community calendar, Lindsay, where we know that the Young at Heart and they meet monthly. Let's get on one of their agendas once we have some material. So I think for our next meeting, having that calendar outlook and we can plug those things in, I'm happy to, try and put that information down on paper somewhere. I like the idea of making sure that we're getting out there, because there is, as you say, Brian, a lot of confusion about what this is for. And with regard to that video that you mentioned, there have been organizations in our community that have benefited from Community Foundation Grey Bruce, the general fund. Perhaps you have some of those pictures, those archives that we could piggyback on. You know, this is what we want to create for the community for the long term, and have it a community-driven fund as opposed to relying on council to approve the funds annually in their budget. Because that is, you know, every 4 years can change. Is that possible, Stuart? You're nodding that, and Christine, you're nodding that going into the archives and pulling some of those more recent pictures of organizations that benefited from it. I know the library, the Friends perhaps, Team Town Hall, various groups had some photographs, and you're very good at taking photographs when you're presenting checks.
We've got our granting archives to draw upon, yes, and there's been lots of support to organizations in Southgate, so we can, yeah, put together a couple of the most compelling stories to integrate. That'll also be helpful
give us
in the
a start.
brochure too. You know, our brochure copy, the Kincardine one, celebrates recent grant recipients, so we could make sure we do that and supply that copy with the Kincardine template for the group to look at.
Okay. All right. Heather, Joan, I know you have to go. You have any other input for the time being? Are we good for August 8th? Is that too early to bring something back? Is that, Lindsay or Holly? I know that would be our normal meeting. Doable?
We should probably, if we're planning to hit the seniors fair and the fall fair, I think if we wait till September, that's cutting it pretty close.
Yeah, well, it'll be after the fall fair anyway. All right, is Heather, Joan, Brian, is August 8th good for all of you?
Yep.
Yeah, for now, yes.
For now. Heather, you're muted. Give it. Awesome. Okay. So that's
Yes, that's fine.
to confirm the next meeting, but I just wanted to touch base before Joan left. Any other thoughts from the committee? Christine, Stuart, Lindsay, Holly, John? Nope. Do we have enough information for our next step? Stuart, you have what you need. Christine, and you have our email addresses for Heather and I. Lindsay, we'll get started, and we'll keep you in the loop as well until the new person starts. How's that sound?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So our next meeting is August 8th. Oh, members' privilege. Anybody? Nope. Next meeting, August 8th, 9 a.m. And we have completed all of the items on the agenda. We can call for adjournment. Brian, would you like to do the honors, even though, yeah. Brian moves, we move. Heather seconds and is smiling. Yeah. All right, we got it done. Thank you,
Thanks,
Stuart
all.
and Christine, for
Thanks,
joining us,
everybody.
Lindsay and Holly for your support, and the committee for coming out on such a glorious morning.
Ciao.
We'll see you on August 8th. Lindsay, could you stay on?